Nestled in the remote woods of Maine, the lake house was an idyllic retreat for tourists seeking solitude. The rustic home, surrounded by towering pines and the shimmering waters of Crescent Lake, seemed like a dream. But in 2019, it became the backdrop for a crime so horrifying it left the entire nation in shock. In June 2019, 4 friends, Lisa, Sarah, Josh, and Mike, rented the lake house for a weekend getaway. The group had been close since college, bound by memories of wild adventures and secrets only they knew. They arrived late Friday afternoon. The air was cool, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange hue over the lake. As they unpacked, a local man named Earl stopped by. Earl, in his 60s, managed the property. His demeanor was unsettling, his eyes lingering on Lisa longer than necessary. "Y'all be careful out here," Earl warned as he handed over the keys. "The woods have their stories." Sarah laughed it off. "Thanks for the warning, Earl. We'll be fine." Earl didn't laugh. "Just don't wander too far after dark," he muttered before disappearing into the woods. The first night. The group spent the evening around a campfire, sharing ghost stories and drinking wine. As the flames flickered, Sarah mentioned a recent local legend, a woman who had gone missing while staying at a nearby cabin. Her body had never been found. "That's why Earl's so weird," she joked. "Probably thinks we're next." Lisa shivered, not from the cold, but from an inexplicable unease creeping over her. As they retired to bed, Lisa swore she heard soft splashes from the lake, as though someone was wading through the water. She peeked through the window. The lake was still, reflecting the moon like a mirror. Dismissing it as her imagination, she went to bed. Saturday morning, the group woke to find strange symbols etched into the dirt near the house. They looked like crude stick figures with their heads crossed out. "Probably some local kids messing with us," Josh said, brushing it off. But Lisa wasn't so sure. She felt as if they were being watched. Despite her unease, the group decided to hike a trail leading to an old abandoned lodge, deep in the woods. The path was overgrown, the trees closing in around them like walls. They found the lodge, its windows shattered, and its doors hanging off their hinges. Inside, they discovered remnants of someone's stay, an old mattress, empty cans, and a journal. The journal was filled with ramblings about the voices in the woods and the man by the lake. The last entry read, "He watches from the water. He waits for darkness." Uneasy, the group left the lodge and hurried back to the lake house. That evening, as they sat on the porch, the atmosphere grew heavy. A dense fog rolled in from the lake, and the woods fell eerily silent. Josh joked to lighten the mood, but even he seemed uneasy. Around midnight, Lisa woke to the sound of whispers. She thought it was Sarah talking in her sleep, but when she turned, she saw Sarah's bed empty. Panicked, she woke the others, and they searched the house. Sarah was nowhere to be found. Josh grabbed a flashlight, and they ventured outside. The fog was thicker now, and the lake seemed closer than before, its surface dark and foreboding. They called out for Sarah, their voices swallowed by the night. Near the water's edge, they found her shoes. The ground was disturbed, as if she had been dragged into the lake. Lisa's scream pierced the stillness. Fearing the worst, they called the police, but it would take hours for help to arrive, given their remote location. Josh and Mike decided to search the lake themselves, grabbing a rowboat and heading out. Lisa stayed behind, too shaken to move. She locked the doors and sat by the window, clutching a knife. An hour passed, then 2. There was no sign of Josh or Mike. Finally, she heard footsteps on the porch. Relief flooded her. But when she opened the door, it wasn't her friends. It was Earl. His clothes were soaked, and his hands were stained red. "I told you to be careful," he whispered, stepping closer. Lisa backed away, heart pounding. "Where are my friends?" Earl's smile was chilling. They didn't listen either. Before she could react, Earl lunged at her. Lisa fought back, slashing at him with the knife. She managed to escape and ran into the woods, her screams echoing through the trees. Lisa stumbled upon the old lodge, hoping to hide. Inside, she found Sarah, or what was left of her. Her body was mutilated, her eyes wide with terror. The symbols from the dirt were carved into her flesh. Lisa gagged, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, she heard Earl's voice outside. "I know you're in there," he sang, his tone mocking. Desperate, Lisa found an old hunting rifle among the lodge's debris. She loaded it with trembling hands and waited. When Earl burst through the door, she fired. The shot hit him square in the chest, and he collapsed. By dawn, the police arrived. They found Lisa, hysterical but alive, and Earl's lifeless body. Josh and Mike were discovered in the lake, their throats slit. The police unearthed evidence linking Earl to several disappearances in the area, including the woman Sarah had mentioned. He had been stalking the lake house renters for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lisa was the sole survivor, but she was forever haunted by what she had endured. She moved far from Maine, unable to be near water or woods again. The lake house remains abandoned, a grim reminder of the horrors that took place. Locals say the fog on Crescent Lake sometimes reveals shadowy figures, as if the victims are still trapped, their souls unable to rest. And on quiet nights, some claim to hear Earl's voice, whispering from the water, "I told you to be careful." On a chilly October evening in 2019, Sycamore Street in the quiet town of Ravenwood, Oregon, was cloaked in an eerie silence. The row of Victorian houses stood like stoic sentinels under a sky smeared with clouds that barely let the moonlight through. It was the kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked and trusted their neighbors without hesitation. But that trust would be shattered forever on this fateful night. The tale begins with the Larkins family, a seemingly perfect household of 4. Karen, the mother, was a school teacher known for her kindness. Her husband, Bill, was a mechanic who often helped neighbors for free. Their children, Ellie and Sam, were just 7 and 9, the kind of kids who waved at strangers and left chalk drawings on the sidewalks. That night, Karen prepared dinner as Bill tinkered with the car in the garage. The kids were upstairs playing board games. The scene was idyllic until 8:15 p.m., when Karen noticed the faint hum of a vehicle idling outside their house. Karen peeked through the curtains. A black van sat motionless, its windows tinted, to obscure any view inside. She dismissed it, thinking it was someone lost, or a delivery driver looking for an address. But the van didn't leave. 15 minutes later, Karen grew uneasy. "Bill," she called out. "There's someone parked outside. They've been there for a while." Bill wiped his hands on a rag and joined her at the window. His eyes narrowed. "Stay here. I'll check it out." Grabbing a flashlight, Bill stepped outside. He approached the van cautiously, shining the beam onto the windshield. It revealed nothing but his own reflection. The driver's window rolled down an inch, and a raspy voice spoke. "Looking for Sycamore Street." "This is Sycamore Street," Bill replied, his tone firm. "Who are you looking for?" But the driver didn't answer. Instead, the van sped off into the night. Bill returned to the house, shaken, but trying to brush it off for Karen's sake. "Probably some punk messing around," he said, but his instincts told him otherwise. Hours passed, and the Larkins family went to bed, unaware that their house was being watched. Across the street, in a shadowed corner, the van had returned. Its engine was off, and its occupants were preparing. 1:45 a.m. Karen awoke to a sound, a faint creak that didn't belong. She nudged Bill awake. "Did you hear that?" Bill groaned, half asleep. "Probably the wind." Karen wasn't convinced. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. She checked the kids' rooms first. Both Ellie and Sam were fast asleep. The noise came again, a soft, deliberate scrape, like metal against wood. It was coming from downstairs. Karen's heart raced as she tiptoed down the stairs. She noticed the front door was ajar. The deadbolt scratched as if someone had been trying to pick it. Her breath hitched. "Bill!" she screamed, her voice breaking the silence like a gunshot. Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs as Bill rushed to her side. He froze at the sight of the door. "Take the kids and lock yourselves in the bathroom," he instructed. "But go." Karen didn't argue. She grabbed the children, who were now awake and crying, and hurried them into the upstairs bathroom, locking the door behind her. Bill grabbed a wrench from the garage and stepped outside, scanning the yard. The streetlights cast long, sinister shadows. He circled the house, his every nerve on edge, but found nothing. When he returned inside, he locked the door and checked all the windows. "It's okay," he called up to Karen. "Just some kids messing around." But as Bill climbed the stairs, a new sound stopped him dead. A faint giggle, high-pitched and chilling. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house. 2 a.m. Karen's phone vibrated in her hand. A text message flashed on the screen. "Come downstairs, Mommy. We want to play." Her blood ran cold. The message was from Ellie's phone, but Ellie was beside her, clutching her arm. "Bill," Karen whispered through the bathroom door. Bill, now halfway up the stairs, bolted toward the sound of her voice. He flung open the bathroom door, his eyes wild. "What's going on?" Karen showed him the phone. Before he could respond, the lights went out. The house plunged into darkness, the silence now oppressive. Bill fumbled for his phone, turning on the flashlight. The narrow beam illuminated the hallway, casting long, flickering shadows. They heard it then, a heavy, deliberate footstep on the stairs. "Stay here," Bill said, his voice trembling. "No, don't leave," Karen pleaded. "I'll be right back," he promised. Bill descended the stairs slowly, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The beam landed on the living room, where a figure stood, a man wearing a grotesque clown mask, his head tilted unnaturally. In his hand was a long, gleaming knife. "Who are you?" Bill demanded, his voice breaking. The man didn't answer. He took a step forward, dragging the knife along the wall, leaving a deep gash in the plaster. 2:15 a.m. upstairs. Karen held the kids tightly, trying to muffle their sobs. She heard a crash, followed by Bill's scream. "Bill!" she cried, but there was no response. The footsteps resumed, now heavier, ascending the stairs. Karen scrambled for anything to defend herself. She grabbed a heavy ceramic soap dish, clutching it like a weapon. The doorknob rattled. "Mommy?" A voice whispered from the other side. It sounded like Ellie, but Karen knew it wasn't. "Stay away!" she screamed. The door burst open, and the masked intruder loomed in the doorway, his knife dripping with blood. Karen threw the soap dish with all her strength, hitting him in the face. He stumbled back, giving her just enough time to shove past him with the kids. They bolted down the stairs, Karen screaming for help. She flung open the front door and ran into the street, waving her arms wildly. A neighbor, woken by the commotion, called 911. Police arrived within minutes, but it was too late for Bill. They found him in the living room, his body mutilated. Blood smeared the walls in grotesque patterns. The intruder was gone, leaving behind only his mask and the chilling memory of his brutality. Over the next few weeks, the story gripped the nation. Investigators linked the crime to a series of similar home invasions across Oregon. all committed by a man the media dubbed the Midnight Slasher. He was never caught. For the Larkins family, life would never be the same. They moved far away, but Karen never slept without a weapon by her side. The children grew up haunted by the memory of that night, the trauma etched into their souls. And somewhere out there, the Midnight Slasher still roams, waiting for his next victim. In the tranquil suburb of Clearwater, Idaho, the Vaughn family lived an unassuming life. Karen and James Vaughn, devoted parents, cherished their children, Emily and Tyler, and their days unfolded in an ordinary rhythm of school, work, and family dinners. But on a chilly October night in 2021, the peace they knew was replaced by a nightmare that would forever haunt the town. It was a quiet evening, like any other. Karen was preparing dinner, while James relaxed in the living room. Emily, a high school junior, was texting friends upstairs, and Tyler, her younger brother, was engrossed in a video game. The Vaughns didn't notice the figure lurking in the woods behind their home, a man wearing a mask, shrouded in darkness, and intent on carrying out a twisted plan. The man, later identified as Derek Hughes, was no stranger to the area. A reclusive neighbor with a troubled past, Hughes had been observing the Vaughn family for weeks. Convinced they had slighted him in some inexplicable way, he chose that night to act on his delusions. At around 9:45 p.m., Hughes entered the home through an unlocked basement window. He moved silently, navigating the house with unsettling precision. James, still unaware of the intruder, was the first to encounter him. A brief confrontation ensued, and James was subdued. Hearing a noise, Karen ventured into the living room. When she came face to face with the masked figure, she froze in shock. Her attempts to protect her family were met with overpowering force. Emily, hearing the commotion downstairs, locked her bedroom door and called 911, her voice shaking as she whispered to the dispatcher. The intruder soon reached Emily's room, breaking down the door despite her efforts to barricade it. Emily fought desperately to protect herself, using anything within reach to defend against the attacker. Her bravery bought precious time, but she ultimately succumbed to Hughes's strength. Meanwhile, Tyler hid upstairs in a closet, clutching a stuffed animal and holding his breath as he listened to the chaos below. The sound of approaching sirens finally drove Hughes to flee the scene before he could reach Tyler. When police arrived, they found the house in disarray. James, Karen, and Emily had fallen victim to Hughes's rampage. Only Tyler survived, his life spared by the quick actions of law enforcement and his decision to stay hidden. In the days that followed, investigators uncovered a chilling motive. Hughes, consumed by paranoia and resentment, believed the Vaughns had wronged him, though there was no evidence to support his claims. He was apprehended after a massive manhunt and later sentenced to life in prison. The tragedy left an indelible mark on the community. While Tyler found refuge with extended family, the events of that October night served as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most peaceful places.